Welcome to Qualified Observers, your trusted source for intelligence briefings. This is the Benjamin Fulford geopolitical update for March 24, 2025. A deep dive into the latest global power shifts, financial maneuvers, and behind-the-scenes developments that shape our world. Stay tuned as we break down the most critical events you won't hear in the mainstream media. The Dragon family makes Trump an offer he would be wise not to refuse. Events that were supposed to take place in 2012, like the start of a new golden age, look like they are finally about to begin. This opportunity comes because the Dragon family is offering virtually unlimited funding to U.S. President Donald Trump. As background, the former head of MI6 asked a direct descendant of the last emperor of China for an introduction to the Dragon family back in the early 2000s. He was told that if you want to talk to China, the DF is as high as it gets. The DF is composed of all the Chinese and Asian royal families, including the Tang Li, the Sung, the Ming, Zhou, the Qing Yi, etc. It is above the Chinese Communist Party and the government of Taiwan. The original introduction was followed by an agreement between the Western White Dragon and the Asian Golden Dragon to finance a new age of abundance starting in 2012. Unfortunately for us all, the Khazarian mafia managed to delay things by 13 years. The start of the delay came with what is known as the Kiaso incident. In June of 2009, two Japanese nationals with diplomatic passports, Akihiko Yamaguchi and Mitsuyoshi Watanabe, were stopped by Italian police at the Swiss border and had $134 billion worth of Dragon family Kennedy bonds confiscated. What happened then is that Neil Keenan, the head of CIA for Europe, handed the bonds to P2 Freemason banker Daniel Dal Bosco. Dal Bosco took them to the Chinese Communist Party, the U.S. Senate Finance Committee, and elsewhere until Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General of the UN, offered Dal Bosco $100 million to go away. Neil Keenan subsequently tried to both cash the bonds and access Dragon family gold bunkers until he was killed in 2016 and replaced with a body double working for the Rothschild family. The reason we are bringing this up now is because the people who assumed his identity now claim Keenan has died. What this means is the Rothschilds have formally given up on trying to use the fake Keenan as a way to access Dragon family treasures. At the same time, Akihiko Yamaguchi has re-emerged with a Dragon family offer to Trump. The documents below are all related to this. Another person who vanished around the time of the Kiaso, a former Federal Reserve Board troubleshooter, has also contacted the White Dragon Society on behalf of both the FRB and the Dragon family. Here is part of what he had to say. Ben, I have been captured and locked down since the time I saw you in 2012. My mandate is very powerful and many secret societies were trying to hijack the mandate and steal assets. Just finally broke free about 8 weeks ago. Barack Obama, Rahm Emanuel, Hillary Clinton, John Podesta, Dennis Hassert, all from Chicago, were involved in my lockdown and attacks. In other words, as soon as Trump became president, this former Fed official was released and given a mandate to cash Dragon family bonds. This is very interesting because a recent White Dragon Society effort to monetize $50 trillion worth of bonds backed by Santa Romana Gold was blocked by Emanuel and Obama. Now that they are out of the way, it looks like nothing is preventing the Asians from providing countless trillions of dollars to Trump. Trump needs to take this offer because right now the U.S. government is running on fumes. Take a look at this chart to understand. In 2024, countries with big real-world economies and big trade surpluses like Brazil, China, and Japan were dumping huge amounts of U.S. treasuries. The biggest buyers of U.S. Treasuries were either countries with trade deficits like France and the UK, or places like the Cayman Islands and Luxembourg that have almost no real economic activity. Recently, the seventh biggest buyer of T-bonds was a cryptocurrency by the name of Tether. In other words, the U.S. is cooking its books in order to appear solvent. The gig is almost up. Trump is not going to be able to solve the problems with tariffs and the like. For example, the USTR's aim to counter China's growing dominance in maritime sectors by imposing port entrance fees of up to $1.5 million on Chinese-built ships and operators while promoting U.S. vessel usage is doomed to fail. The International Chamber of Shipping, representing over 80% of the global merchant fleet, warns that the proposed fees could severely disrupt U.S. trade and increase consumer prices. Current data shows China builds 61% of the world's new merchant vessels, with the proposed fees potentially affecting 98% of container ships calling at U.S. ports. Due to decades of neglect, the U.S. maritime industry has seen a steady decline. We necessarily must rely on vessels registered in other nations, CSA states in its submission. The situation is hopeless without DF help, because the Khazarian mafia has destroyed Western industrial infrastructure, and it will take years, if not decades, to rebuild it. Instead of building the real-world economy, the KM has been keeping the Western financial system afloat since 2012 by doing things like using gold-plated tungsten bars leveraged 1,000 times over. That is all about to collapse in a catastrophic manner. As a zero-hedge commentator notes, even if all the gold they claim we have in Fort Knox was really in there, it would only cover half of just the interest on our debt for 1 year. The trigger for collapse is likely to be the April 15th tax filing deadline. The IRS expects a $500 billion drop in revenue as an increasing number of taxpayers decide to boycott the illegal IRS. That would be enough to push the U.S. government over the edge of complete insolvency. The private sector is also in trouble. Jared Dillian warns the private equity market, now ballooning at $8 trillion, is teetering on the edge of collapse. In his latest analysis, he uncovers hidden risks like over-leveraged firms, shaky debt, and a cash crunch threatening pensions, drawing eerie parallels to the 2008 financial crisis. The 2008 financial crisis was papered over when the Asians were fooled into supporting Barack Obama by letting him leverage 700 tons of gold more than 1,000 times over to create $23 trillion of funny money. This, together with extorting money from Japan and forcing the world to pay for COVID tests and vaccines, bought the KM enough time to keep their U.S. corporation running until now. This time we need to bankrupt it and replace it with something new financed with Dragon family money. There are signs this is happening. For example, the United States has been invited to join the 56-member Commonwealth of Nations, something Trump wrote, "Sounds good to me," on his Truth Social page. This means recognizing that since 1867, Canada has never been truly independent. As the man in this video notes, according to the 1777 Articles of Confederation, Canada is America.
Article 9 says Canada, acceding to this confederation and joining in the measures of the United States, shall be admitted into and entitled to all the advantages of this union. But no other colony shall be admitted into the same unless such admission is to be agreed upon by at least 9 states. So right there in the Articles of Confederation, Canada is part of the United States. Don't let them tell you any differently.
It remains under the control of the British Crown, operating as a corporate entity registered under the authority of the monarchy. The Governor-General appointed by the Crown has the power to dismiss Parliament and override any Canadian law. Canada's legal system is subservient to British common law, meaning the ultimate authority over Canadian sovereignty still rests with the monarchy. Just like the United States, Canada also badly needs a new form of government that actually works for the people. A secret report from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, or RCMP, concludes Canadians are running out of money, running out of hope, and once they realize the depth of their economic despair, could revolt. People under the age of 35 in Canada have no hope of being able to buy a home. This is because home prices are deliberately made so high that it requires a lifetime of wage slavery to pay for a house. Why should a house in Canada, with plenty of land and raw materials, cost $1 million? What is a house? It is some concrete, 2x4s, plywood, a few pipes, some wires, and a bit of paint. This should only cost about $7,000, which was about the price of a house in Los Angeles in the 1950s. As soon as a jubilee is staged, debt slavery is ended, and the government once again takes control of money in cooperation with the Asians, everyone can once again own their own house. Also, as a Canadian and a member of the Five Eyes, I want to make it very clear the Monar needs to be a symbol of unity, not a centralized, despotic ruling power. That is why we need to return to the original crown and get away from papal control.
We have King Charles III and Queen Camilla. G'day everybody, Karen Brewer at the gates of the Governor on the 21st of October 2023, and we've just concluded our instructions to the Governor today. As you'll notice in my instructions today, they were extensive and they include some comments about the Crown. And so I'm going to detail that for you right now. You see this crown here, this is the Catholic crown. You know it's the Catholic crown because the arches point downwards. These particular shields would have been replaced just after 1908 when the treason began. Now the thing you'll notice interesting about this particular sign here on Gate B is they are depicting a completely different crown. This crown right here is the correct crown. That is the imperial crown. That is the crown of which Queen Victoria was crowned with. And as you can see, the arches go up. That is the true Commonwealth crown. This one here would have been replaced just after 1908 when King Edward VII took the Catholic crown on his coronation. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the beginning of the treason. And that treason has continued on since 1908. It was the very reason we had the First and Second World Wars. They had to slaughter the knowledge. They thought we'd never work it out. But as you can clearly see, the arches of this crown go down, and if you look at the moment of coronation, you will see at the very moment of coronation, King Charles was in fact crowned with that crown when he should have been crowned with this one. Now, you'll notice if you go and have a look at photos of King Charles, when he appears on the balcony at Buckingham Palace, he's actually wearing this crown. They did the old switcheroo. But at the moment of coronation, the treasonous king was in fact crowned with the treasonous Catholic crowns. So make sure going forward, you know your crowns, folks. It's really important that you know your crowns. Because this Freemason network of filth been operating in treason since August 1908. That's the history. Right now, we've got this Freemason network of filth trying to encourage everyone into a third world war of their making. We ain't playing. They all gotta go. We ain't ever again allowing the Freemason to slaughter the profane people. Nowhere in the world. Stand up, Anzac, use your voice and gather at the gates of your governor. That is the last lawful and peaceful solution that you have.
The Pope, in any case, is now a fake controlled by shadowy P2 Freemasons, and the Roman Church is no longer Christian. It has become a satanic entity. To illustrate, let us look at what their man Barack Thunder of Satan Obama regime did with the $23 trillion they fooled the Asians into handing over. Here's how he used some of that money. Barack Obama was using money to USAID to pretend to send aid overseas. In actuality, Obama was laundering the taxpayer dollars and using it to train rent-a-mobs instead. USAID pumped $1.2 billion in, and we sponsored these activist groups and these civil society organizations to learn how to use Facebook, learn how to use Twitter, learn how to use hashtags, learn how to coordinate street protests so that everyone knows where to go, what street to show up on, what kind of slogans to know to use in order to create the pro-democracy predicate for it. You're using Cayman Islands bank accounts. You're saying you're earmarking it for Pakistani aid. But the money was never sent to Pakistan. It was sent to the Cayman Islands to fund this whole operation. They are still at it with the Cayman Islands funny money. Data analyst Tony Saruga exposes just how staged the latest Democratic Party rally was. There were 20,189 devices. 84% of the devices present had attended 9 or more Kamala Harris rallies, Antifa, BLM, pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian protests. 31% had attended over 20. Here's another way this BS money is being spent on BS. Watch an MSNBC announcer say the reason it's so cold is because of global warming.
Yesterday I heard you guys talking when we were talking about all this cold air, and you said, well, if the planet's warming, how come it's so cold? So we thought we would answer that for you. So Arctic air is contained by the polar vortex. It keeps it up there in the Arctic. However, as the planet is warming, climate change has actually caused significant warming up into the Arctic. So as that warm air comes up into the Arctic, that weakens the polar vortex, that boundary, and it allows that cold air to move south. And that is why climate change, global planet warming, actually allows some parts of the country to be colder than usual. For today, that cold air goes all the way down to Texas. We've got snow showers, Great Lakes, some snow in the northern Rockies.
Former African Union ambassador to the United States, Arikana Chihambori Kwao, says similar abuses with Cayman Island. Funny USAID money took place all over Africa. They're using that open access sounding humanitarian to constantly destabilize governments. We need to understand the real reason why USAID is in Africa, and not just USAID, but other NGOs. They are coming in claiming that they're introducing grassroots initiatives that are going to help the people, and so they use that as a way to go into the most remote parts of Africa. When you look at it on paper, it all looks really good, but they're actually wolves in sheep's clothing. The American taxpayer needs to know the billions of dollars that are being given to USAID. A fraction is making it to the people. They're using that open access sounding humanitarian to constantly destabilize governments. I can tell you right now, the majority of African leaders, and not just African leaders, but leaders in the developing world, are celebrating the exit of USAID. If you think about it, their sole purpose, for example, filling in the gaps in healthcare and education, where is the change? Show me one country that USAID was in and education improved. Show me what country where USAID was in and healthcare improved. They laundered our money.
To understand the real reason why USAID is in Africa. And not just USAID, but other NGOs. You look at DFID, which is the British equivalent, and many other smaller ones. Their sole purpose was to act as if they're coming to rescue Africa. They are coming in claiming that they're introducing grassroots initiatives that are going to help the people. And so they use that as a way to go into the most remote parts of Africa. When you look at it on paper, it all looks really good. But they're actually wolf in sheep's clothing. They are using that open access sounding humanitarian to constantly destabilize governments. I can tell you right now, the majority of African leaders, and not just African leaders, but leaders in the developing world, are celebrating the exit of USAID. If you think about it, their sole purpose, for example, filling in the gaps in healthcare and education, where is the change? Show me one country that USAID was in and education improved. Show me what country where USAID was in and healthcare improved. The social services they're bringing, it's peanuts. The American taxpayer needs to know the billions of dollars that are being given to USAID, a fraction is making it to the people.
The Indian government has figured this out and just raided 8 Soros-backed offices linked to the Open Society Foundations, an organization backed by U.S. billionaire George Soros. This is part of the Indian government's commitment to curbing foreign interference in domestic affairs. The U.S. government should copy India. Trump has started. He just disbanded the dumbification ministry, noting taxpayers spent around $200 billion at the federal level on schools during the COVID-19 pandemic, on top of the more than $60 billion they spend annually on federal school funding. This year's National Assessment of Educational Progress showed that 70% of 8th graders were below proficient in reading and 72% were below proficient in math. The federal education bureaucracy is not working. This is not incompetence, this is deliberate dumbing down of the population, and it was carried out by the KM. The newly released JFK files make it clear foreign interference from Israel has destroyed America. Here is some of what has been released. President John F. Kennedy and U.S. Attorney General Bobby Kennedy forced the American Zionist Council to register as a foreign agent, blocking them from donating to U.S. officials. JFK was assassinated on November 22, 1963. RFK was assassinated on June 5, 1968. AIPAC replaced the American Zionist Council without any opposition. Here is a letter about that signed by Donald Rumsfeld. Next is JFK file 104-10326-10014. Israel was behind the JFK assassination. This is the full reading of the declassified document provided by the qualified observers. Top secret, at Concord nightclub, 0:30 to 03:30. Subject paid for drinks. His spouse may return to Addis circa early May. Subject said he was distancing himself from Egyptian businessman Safa, phonetic, and added, "Before I leave Addis, I have a lot to tell you. I'll tell you when the story is finished. A lot goes on here." Subject mentioned Israeli trade fair at Sheraton Hotel, 25th to 26th February. The Egyptian economic counselor was invited. Regarding Rami Hatan, subject said he was aware Hatan was single, lived in Bole area, was a first tour officer. The Russian delegation was here for Ethiopian tank refurbishment. The recent Israeli delegation was here to bid on T-55 and aircraft refurbishment. This is corroborated by reports from February 19, 1998. 6 Oromo oppositionists were extradited from Djibouti to Ethiopia. Foreign Minister Musa is visiting Addis the week of February 23rd. He is a known womanizer and may visit Concord nightclub. He has 3 bodyguards, but they are not professionals. The subject paid the equivalent of $60 to blood test a local girlfriend named Helen, and she's all right. Regarding salary, the subject is paid pretty well and works hard to earn the pay. Upon parting, the subject said, "Sleep well. I won't say have nice dreams because we, intel officers, do not have nice dreams." February 20th, late dinner with the subject at Lion Club, then Concord nightclub. 2 businessmen, a Saudi named Salah and a Jordanian named Mahmoud, both regulars at Concord, joined the subject and company officer. The businessmen spoke of exporting Ethiopian cattle to Saudi Arabia and also spoke of horses and camels. The subject's embassy office is being remodeled by an Ethiopian interior designer, and a subordinate watches the designer at all times. The subject will have the company officer over to the office once it is finished. The subject will be busy the week of February 23rd due to the visit of Musa. February 21st. The company officer visited the subject's home and office, which was being painted and had only chairs and a bookcase. Mahmoud, an Egyptian, supervised the Ethiopian painter. In the subject's living room were mementos from the U.S. Marine Corps ball, including American flag place settings and champagne flutes. Foreign chiefs posted abroad have the use of a government vehicle, as does the subject. The company officer apologized for not phoning, but the subject replied that the officer could call at his home any time, unannounced. He understood the officer's aversion to phones and added that Ethiopians tap diplomats' office and home phones. During the conversation with the officer, the subject turned on a tape player for sound masking and explained his home had not yet been tested for bugs. A simple test is to turn off all appliances and check the electric meter. There is also a more sophisticated test. The subject phoned his spouse in Cairo and had the company officer speak with her. The subject gave the officer two small gifts, a marble head of Nefertiti and a papyrus paper painting. The subject's brother-in-law, a police major, is no good and asks his father-in-law for money. Attaché Wadi al-Thaqafi may be the Saudi intel officer in Addis, but the subject is not yet sure. Israel is no good. Israel was behind the JFK assassination. The subject cheated on his wife 3 times, all in Addis in the last 8 months. He feels guilty but remains fond of his local girlfriend Helen, whom he does not bring home for fear his household help would tell his spouse. The owner of Concord nightclub smuggles mercury and has good connections among Israelis and the Ethiopian government. Top secret. The files also confirm a secret intelligence pipeline between the CIA and Israeli intelligence, personally overseen by CIA counterintelligence chief James Angleton. This wasn't just routine intel sharing. It was a deliberate effort to conceal Israel's involvement in sensitive United States operations, bypassing standard intelligence channels. Angleton acted as the sole gatekeeper, ensuring that all Israeli-related intelligence was filtered through him alone. He also controlled the flow of intel to the FBI, carefully scrubbing reports to ensure that Israeli intelligence was never directly named, a covert operation hidden in plain sight. Judge Andrew Napolitano and Jeffrey Sachs say it very clearly. The JFK files could be the most divisive event in modern history. And you know that one person has said that after the Kennedy assassination, that there has been no president. They have only been factotums of the system.
In my last conversation with President Trump in the White House, he called me a lot. And this is after January 6th, so it's 2 weeks before, or a week before he's leaving office. He wanted to run past me the names of people he was going to pardon and sentences he was going to commute. He wanted my opinion on them. Some of them I knew. I said, how you doing? He said, not too well. And he went off into a tangent about what he thought happened with the election. I said, you made a promise to the public many times and to me privately that you haven't kept. What? I'll take care of it right now. I said, you promised you would release the records of the JFK assassination. He said to me, Judge, if they showed you what they showed me, you wouldn't have released it either. And I said, who's they and what did they show you? And then he said, Judge, someday when we're on the phone, and then he raised his voice, and there aren't 15 people listening to the phone call, back to a normal voice, I'll tell you.
Oh, my God.
I mean, this makes it sound even worse. Who are they? Probably somebody in the intelligence community. What did they show him? JFK's brains blown out?
This is it. It was said by one person that after the Kennedy assassination, there has been no president. They have only been factotums of the system since then.
Yeah.
It may well be the most decisive event in modern American history.
While self-educated citizens like readers of this newsletter have long known about Israeli involvement in the JFK assassination, etc., the fact that it is appearing in official government documents means this can now be seen as a deliberate act of war by Israel against the United States. We also now know, thanks to recent documents from the National Archives, that the United States Secret Service, Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, and Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, had no involvement in the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. This assertion is based on archived records which have been cited by multiple sources. The claims were reiterated in a series of announcements, confirming the agency's lack of participation in the historical event. Let that sink in. It was Mossad, not the CIA, who killed Kennedy. Mossad under Benjamin Netanyahu is also an enemy of the Jewish people. He just fired the Shin Bet chief because he insisted on an investigation of the October 7th false flag. A government that mass murders its own citizens does not deserve to exist. One that mass murders children even less so. The big question now is if the KM pedophile material is also going to be released. Remember, this was torture and murder of children taking place on an industrial scale. A DHS report from August 2024 revealed that Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, transferred over 448,000 unaccompanied migrant children to the HHS between fiscal years 2019 and 2023. The Office of Refugee Resettlement, a division within HHS, is responsible for placing these unaccompanied children with sponsor homes in the United States. However, the report indicated that ICE was unable to track the location and status of all the children who had been released from HHS custody. Now we find out at least 1,000 FBI agents are working on national security issues connected to the Epstein files before they are released to the public. The excuse for redactions will always be for national security or protect innocent victims' reasons, comments a Mossad source. We all need to keep the pressure on the U.S. government to admit this was an Israeli operation designed to control the American government through pedophile blackmail. There is a hint Trump might be willing to reveal this. A White House press release says, Trump asked President Zelensky about the children who had gone missing from Ukraine during the war, including the ones that had been abducted. This came because the Russians have made it very clear a condition for peace in Ukraine is denazification, and that means war crimes trials for members of the Zelensky regime. The truth is going to shock us all. Human rights activists of the Foundation to Battle Injustice have obtained strong evidence of the involvement of Ukrainian high-ranking officials and businessmen, including Vladimir Zelensky, in the sexual exploitation of underage children and their connection to the famous British businessman Richard Branson. Thanks to verified data from several sources, the Foundation's experts found out the main beneficiary of the illegal pedophile business is Ukrainian businessman Timur Mindik, a close friend and main sponsor of Zelensky. Even larger and more deeply rooted crimes that go far beyond public morality and contradict commonly accepted human values. Branson organized his own criminal pedophile syndicate on his island Necker in the Caribbean. The former manager of the Necker Island complex and the mother of a kidnapped Ukrainian girl are among the many whistleblowers involved. According to Foundation to Battle Injustice sources. According to financial results posted online, a number of Branson's companies have made losses almost every year since 2010. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, Branson's main source of income has been his personal island in the Caribbean. At various times, Necker Island was visited by Jimmy Carter, 39th President of the USA, Barack and Michelle Obama, 44th President of the USA, and his wife Nelson Mandela, human rights activist Robert De Niro, American actor and producer Demi Moore, actress from the USA Mick Jagger, British musician, and many other famous people and high-ranking officials of the USA and Great Britain. Branson described the benefits of an elite resort vacation, assuring that on his island everyone can get all their secret desires fulfilled and that nowhere else in the world one can find such things. According to an employee of the Office of the President, Branson also showed photos from the island landscapes, villas, pools, and among them explicit photos with teenage girls. Necker Island is located 60 kilometers from Little St. James Island, the infamous Epstein Island. According to the former manager's testimony, a network of underground catacombs is present beneath the main building, to which only selected guests of Branson had access. Sexual orgies with the most gruesome perversions of children take place in the basement. It is the most protected place on the island. Every week the clients change, and about once a month new victims are brought in on private flights, mostly children around 8 to 12 years old and also teenage girls. Now the island is mostly visited by cronies of Ukrainian President Zelensky. He himself has been a few times. Most often they are Timur Mindik, Kirill Budanov, Dmytro Kuleba, Ruslan Stefanchuk, Rustam Umaroy, Alexei Reznikov. Of course, Prince Andrew also remains a client of the island. He started coming especially often after the start of the Epstein trial in 2019. Sexual abuse of children who are hostages on the island happens every day. But one of the creepiest things I have encountered on the island is what Kirill Budanov and Timur Mindik do. Budanov exclusively favors the disabled, children with no arms and legs and mental illnesses. Mindik has created a separate entertainment for himself on the island. He built a pigsty to feed the corpses of children who have not survived the violence. I just can't believe I've seen all this. Ukraine was the international hotbed for people trafficking women and children prior to the conflict, and a minimum of 300,000 people have tragically been trafficked through Ukraine. We know now that places like Epstein Island or Necker Island are just part of an international network of child torture facilities that some sources say kill at least 8 million children per year worldwide. We also know special forces are destroying these facilities. Our sources say the fire that broke out inside a theme park at the Walt Disney World in Florida last week ignited precisely at the entrance to the underground tunnels.
my god, look at everybody.
Oh my god, it's right there! Oh.
The mass murder of children is not the only thing special forces are going after. The vaccine mass murders are also being dealt with. In the latest on this front, Peter Kotla, a Slovakian government representative who examined COVID-19 vaccines used in his country, concludes that vaccinated Slovaks became genetically modified, leading to a possible increase in cancer and cell death. The Asians are aware of this vaccine damage, and it is leading to a revolution in China, Japan, and Korea. The Chinese military is apparently embroiled in its worst crisis since Marshal Lin Biao died in a mysterious plane crash in 1971. Lin fled either after a failed coup attempt or after being blamed for one. General He Weidong, the number 3 ranked uniformed officer, was reportedly detained on March 11th. General He was instrumental in Xi's earlier purges in the military, so his disappearance, if confirmed, could indicate a great threat to Xi's authority. While Xi loyalists were being removed, PLA Daily, the Chinese military's main propaganda organ, ran a series of articles praising collective leadership, a direct rejection of Xi's continual calls for unity and centralization of control. Lin Biao was the top Russian communist and KM agent in China. His removal was followed by the expulsion from China of all KM agents. If the removal of Huidong is at the same level, then it means the faction of the CCP responsible for the COVID-19 mass murder event is being purged along with their foreign handlers. There is also revolution in the air in Japan. There are massive and growing demonstrations calling for the dismantling of the finance ministry and for the prosecution of vaccine mass murderers. In response, the Japanese government is planning to declare a state of emergency on March 27th and start censoring social media and SNS messages on April 1st. This reminds me of Romanian dictator Nicolae Ceausescu ramping up repression just before he ended up in front of a firing squad. In Korea as well, there are massive daily protests calling for the removal of the puppet government. As these protests unfolded, South Korea was hit with 20 major fires, including one that destroyed a 1,000-year-old temple. DW attacks are widely suspected as being the cause of the fires. France is also preparing for unrest. The government is preparing to distribute a survival manual to every household to help citizens prepare for imminent threats, including armed conflict on French soil. It suggests items people should prepare as part of a survival kit, including at least 6 liters of bottled water, 10 cans of food, batteries, a flashlight, and medical supplies. French newspaper Le Figaro said the timing of the manual's release could easily suggest that the state is reacting to the unstable international situation. We also note that while mass protests in Turkey and Serbia did cross our radar, a close look shows they are Soros-type color revolution attempts that are doomed to failure. In conclusion this week, as a sign of the times, here you can watch a farmer take out a government drone for spraying his field without consent. We all need to act like this farmer and take action when we are being directly threatened. Remember, self-defense is legal and the KM are still trying to kill you and your family. That wraps up this Benjamin Fulford geopolitical update brought to you by qualified observers. If you found this information valuable, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more hard-hitting intelligence briefings. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. Let's keep the discussion going. Until next time, stay informed, stay sharp, and question